Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give just another minute to let people come on in, and then we'll get started. It is 6 o'clock Pacific time on the first Wednesday of the month, which means it must be a member perspective call. Everyone, thank you so much for jumping on tonight and registering, and looking forward to chatting with our two awesome members on the call today. First and foremost, I'm Maddie Roach. I may not have spoken with any of you before, but if you all were to join XYPN, we certainly would be talking more. But I've had the honor and privilege of working both with Garrett and Eric over the past year as they've built their firms. I'm the director of Getting Shit Done at XYPN. I used to host this call back in its infancy, and now I'm back for tonight's call. I really look forward to it. We've got some really good questions. Tonight is all about the monthly retainer model. And we've got two awesome members on the line who have been with us since they started their firms. And they've both have some similarities together in who they work with and how they service those clients, but also have a lot of knowledge about what it takes to build a firm. So tonight we've got your questions that you've submitted ahead of time. We've got your questions that will come through the chat tonight. And we're just gonna go back and forth and have a conversation. We are recording this so you guys can watch the recording when we're done. But really chat in any questions you have. Let us know if anything comes up, but I'll just kind of be interviewing Garrett and Eric a little bit tonight. We do have to give Garrett an extra shout out for staying up so late. He's on the East Coast, so it's 9 o'clock. Which means we will certainly be respecting the hour time limit on tonight's call. We will share some contact information for both of these awesome members, so feel free to reach out to them, connect with them on LinkedIn, check out their websites, and certainly be inspired by them. I think they're both really good examples of what you can expect if you're working hard, what you can achieve in your first year. So before we really dive in, the point of this call every month is to give our non-members an opportunity to hear from our members about what they're building and how they did it. And now we're kind of making the topic focused around one topic per month. So this month is the monthly retainer topic, and we're going to talk to these awesome members about how they service their clients, what their fees are like, how many members or how many clients they think they can service on this model, how it went, pain points, all that fun stuff. So tonight's going to be awesome. Again, thank you so much for joining, and thank you both, Garrett and Eric, for being willing to be my co-host tonight. So Eric, let's start with you, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick rundown of your firm, just who you are, what a little bit of your background, where you're located, and then Garrett will jump over to you and then we'll dive into questions, okay?
Yes, yeah, Eric Maldonado. I'm in California. Let's see, I've been in the industry for about 7 years, and it's been fun. XYPN's been doing a great job. As was mentioned, started on it about last September, October. And yeah, Aquila Wealth Advisors is the name of my firm.
Wonderful. Thanks. Garrett, how about you?
Yeah, so Garrett Moore here in Bradenton, Florida. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. Came over from the independent broker-dealer space. Very familiar with Nerd's Eye View for a number of years as a resource. Was familiar with XY as it began launching. Eventually my broker-dealer was bought out, and it gave me the opportunity to do something different, and decided to take the leap and form an RIA and join XY, and went live in October as well, and it's been an awesome time.
Great. Eric, who do you primarily work with?
My niche is business owners, tends to be 30, 40s, self-employed, age 30s to 40s. Family, kids, usually looking to do well with their profits, retire and send their kids to school and travel. And then also within that, there's a faith-based component that I tend to work with, because that's kind of the circles that I socialize in.
Absolutely. And we could host a whole nother call on niche and how that helps your pipeline, because I know that you've had some success in that avenue. Garrett, who do you primarily work with?
Yeah, so sort of some overlap there with Eric. I work with a lot of people in the nonprofit community. It's a realm that I've been involved with and passionate about for a number of years. So I decided to get involved there and sort of push my business in that direction, and it's been wonderful. If they're not directly involved with it. They're sort of philanthropically minded. And one of the best ways that I've been able to describe it is people that view their money as an extension of their love. So that's sort of how I would sum it up.
Wonderful. And Garrett, how many, just for context, how many clients do you work with currently, and how many of those are on the monthly subscription model?
So right now I'm at 60, and about half of those are on monthly retainer.
Wonderful. And Eric, how about you?
About 30 clients, and about a quarter of those are on the monthly retainer.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right, folks, let's dive in. We were sent a lot of questions, and a lot of them were really, really good, very, very valid. We may not be able to get to all of them, but we're certainly going to try to provide some really good insight on how the servicing happens, what the structure of fees looks like, how you pitch that to your potential clients. I guess because we just talked about the number of clients you're servicing, Eric, what do you feel is your capacity at being able to service on the monthly retainer model?
Unlimited, a billion with a B. No.
A billion with a B.
I always say 100 clients, 100 households. Just feels right. And, but we'll see when I get to 50, 80, Lord willing, 100. If I need to stop before that, or if I feel like I have more capacity, the Dunbar number gets thrown around. 150 cognitively is how much you can keep straight in your mind. But I feel like 100 will be a good fit. At least that's how I feel at this point.
Sure. Garrett, you're approaching that. Are you feeling like you're getting to capacity?
So yes and no. It sort of depends on what all you plan on doing for your clients is an important distinction to make. I would say, to answer the question, I would say 100 as well. That's a common number that you will see amongst XY members. But like I said, make sure you think about what all you plan on doing for your clients. A lot of people sort of separate investment management from pure financial planning, and are thus able to handle far more investment management clients than they are comprehensive planning clients. So think about that. Think about sort of your service model and exactly how you want to go about it.
Yep, wonderful. Speaking of that, what is the typical relationship that you have with your monthly retainer clients? I know that's a broad question. I'm sure we'll get to different aspects of it. But Garrett, if you wouldn't mind speaking to kind of what your typical relationship looks like with them.
Yeah, sure. So on the retainer side is how I do the full-fledged financial planning, in addition to AUM for investment management. So on that's my bread and butter, really, is what I enjoy doing. I think it's so incredibly important. Broker dealer, coming from that realm, it's pretty investment planning centric. So to be able to dive deeper with clients and really dig into all aspects of their finances, you can really add a lot of value there. So that's how I describe the relationship.
Eric, how about you? What's your relationship on an ongoing basis with these clients?
Yeah, I mean, I try to stage it in quarterly check-ins. Sometimes people are busy and it ends up being semi-annual, or sometimes at the very beginning there's more contact because you're getting things ramped up. But even when I present my deliverable, which is I try to get like an executive summary of some sort to them of the plan when all is said and done, with about 3 to 6 months worth of action items for them. And I feel like that's enough time for them to do things, but not so much time that they can't really see past a year of just visually what to do. And then if it's business owners, there tends to be, joint meetings with CPAs and attorneys. That's included in that. And if not business owners, there's usually, something around the realm of cash flow and automating and setting up contributions. And because a lot of times they're in build up phase, momentum phase, accumulation phase of life.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot to do with clients when you're comprehensively planning with them. The big question, and even members ask this as they join the network and begin to implement the monthly retainer model, are you emailing or calling your clients on a monthly basis? Eric, you can go for it.
Yeah, I do have a newsletter that I write, and that goes out every other week at this point. I'll try it for maybe a year and see if people miss it, if I stop, or if they want less or more. So that is contact, but it's not the contact that is like individual, each client, can I help you right now this month? So that's one way to answer it. The other way, though, is I try to get the next meeting on the schedule that is usually never the next month after our current meeting, because to your leading question a little bit there, Maddie, I'm trying not to be a monthly transactionalist.
Sure. And that makes sense. And we've heard it in many different ways. Some members do talk to their clients every month. Others don't. Others describe it as an annual fee divided by 12 or quarterly. Garrett, what's your take on that? Do you feel pressure to reach out to them every month since they're paying monthly?
Yeah, I do not feel that pressure, but I think it largely comes down to how you present it in the first place. So Maddie, like you said, if you present this as what would be one large upfront fee as being divided over time to make it more affordable for clients, that can make a big difference in the way your clients perceive it and what they expect.
So it sounds like there's some personalization to the relationships.
Yes.
Speaking of fees, Eric, how do you charge for the monthly retainer model? And what does your conversation look like when you're having it with a prospective client?
Yeah, I try to get a semblance of if this person's more of a DIY, investing on your own and kind of a validator, and they want someone to have conversations with and point them in the right direction, versus there's assets involved, they want to outsource it or have me do it for them and collaborate with them, because that plays into I guess my general estimate of a fee. And then after that, I do, as you were mentioning there, frame it as an ongoing year-by-year agreement and arrangement. And then I like to give options in terms of how they pay, just so that way they know that we're working together. At least a year is a good amount of time to get things done. And if things change, then we can change it after that. And then if you want to pay in payments, so to speak, installments, monthly or even quarterly. And I try to ask them, do you like, some people just don't like seeing a monthly deduction coming from their account. And some people just want to stroke a check and write it one time and pay the fee. So I try to give them it more from an option standpoint. And then usually by the time we get to that conversation of payment, I have a good idea of what their scenario is. If they're more of a high income earner and not a lot saved, which would be someone who wants to pay monthly, or they've got a lot saved and they want to get going with investing and just like writing the check and paying like that. So I like to have variety at this point. Maybe I'll get to the point when I have 60, 70, 80 clients where I got to make it more rigid and funnel them into what I want them to do. But for now, I like giving options. Yeah,
absolutely. We had an attendee chime in on the chat that people often balk at the idea of paying monthly, especially prospects in their 30s. Garrett, they're proposing $100 to $150 a month. Garrett, what's the conversation you're having to avoid that balk?
Yeah, so I'll mirror what Eric said. I think he made a very important point there, and that is to leave yourself some options in your ADV as far as what you can offer the clients and sort of cater to them. everybody's in a different situation, and everybody's going to sort of fit into a different model better than others. So if you can have those at your disposal, it could certainly make things a lot easier. As far as balking at the idea of paying monthly, Vincent, I would say that your pricing is good there, depending on what you're offering. Generally, you're going to see anywhere from 100 a month to maybe 250 would be the upper end of most of the XY members on a monthly basis. That's sort of hard to answer exactly where things might be getting tripped up. Feel free to shoot me an email, and maybe I can share some thoughts there after a little bit more of a conversation.
You mentioned your ADV, Garrett. How does your ADV list the monthly retainer? What was that process of incorporating that into the language of your compliance documents?
Sure. So right now I simply have it broken up into two different sections, sort of depending on where the client is at in their financial life cycle. Basically, are they accumulating or are they at the distribution end? So it'll be one of those two that they fall into. In retrospect, again, to reiterate Eric's points, I wish I would have, and probably will at this point, still incorporate some more options. I actually had XY do all of my compliance stuff, filing with the state and creating documents and whatnot, and they were outstanding, working with Scott Gill and Travis Gano. I was in a time crunch coming out of the BD world, needing to launch as quickly as possible. So they took care of all that and made it very painless.
Wonderful. I think both of you guys actually opted for expedited servicing. Eric, how did you end up listing or prefer to list your monthly retainer model within the ADV?
I believe it's as a fixed fee, kind of project-based fixed fee, and then I have discretion on how it's charged. But being in California, I believe we have the most by far RIAs. So I think there's a lot of, I think just the state regulators haven't seen, I mean, they've seen everything at this point. So I didn't really get much pushback or any kind of like eye roll or anything like that when I put it through. And I think most of the compliance templates and service offerings have that kind of already in there, pretty basic. I mean, the good news is anybody can go read an RIA and just look it up online and see how people are doing it. I know I like reading RIA, I like reading ADVs.
Yep. They're all public. You can definitely go on there and read a variety of different ways people lay out their fee structures. That's great education to poke around. Definitely on our advisor profile page, we link to the ADVs. You can just go online and read through them. Going back to the fee conversation, do you sign your clients up for contracts? Do they have to engage you for a year or anything like that, Eric?
Yes, there is a financial planning agreement that has a few options of line items that I write in what they chose, whether it was a comprehensive financial plan, an ongoing retainer arrangement, if it's a fixed fee or a project fee, or even like an education seminars, and then it has the dollar amount and how often they're paying. So I do some more project-based and call it a quick start or a one meeting, one deliverable arrangement. Some people kind of understand that as hourly work, but I try not to give hourly like breakdowns because I want it to be more about the project and the arrangement and just a full service deliverable. And that will be on the agreement and they'll sign that. Otherwise, it is a year by year arrangement and agreement, just so everyone knows that we want to make a cognitive decision to re-up again for another year.
Yeah. How about you, Garrett?
Yeah, so I did not incorporate any minimum time frames for the engagement. It's purely month to month, and that was sort of a golden rule thing. You know, what would I like to see if I engaged somebody in this? And that was sort of my response. The obvious risk is that you do a lot of upfront work and they take off with what you've done for them thus far. Fortunately, I have not had that happen.
Wonderful. Um, the question of kind of competition came up a few times in the questions that were submitted ahead of time. Not just kind of competition among advisors, but compression, of fees. People are able to go out and get robo-advisors. Folks are able to go online, use online tools. Tell me about kind of how you're setting yourself apart from that. Garrett, what is your take on that? What is the value that you really propose to your clients?
Sure. So you're absolutely correct that that's a big topic of conversation. I think if you sort of look back through recent history, many years ago, decades ago, advisors were engaged merely to execute transactions, right? People didn't even have the option of doing that. And that sort of got commoditized by online brokers and whatnot. And it was at that point that it became more advice oriented, right? And now we're starting to see that become involved in these robo advisors. And it's for that reason that I think this sort of next generation of advisors is, you're going to have to combine not only everything that you've had to in the past, but also this deep relationship where you are a trusted advisor and a bit of a psychologist and a bit of a cheerleader as well. So it's sort of all of that combined, along with the comprehensive aspects that I sort of use as a pitch.
Yeah. I really think the public and clients really underestimate the value of having an unbiased resource on your side and someone that can talk to you about the soft parts of life, the goals that you share. Yes, there's robo advisors, but they can't talk to me about my goals for the next 20 years and how I want to spend my money, things like that. Eric, have you come across that? Hey, I can just hire someone online, or I can do this myself, any of that? And if so, how have you addressed it?
Yeah. People have actually signed up for kind of the ongoing arrangement of paying me, and then they decide on their own to do Wealthfront or Betterment or one of those. And pretty much every time I've seen them do that, they messed it up somehow. Because it's almost so easy to set up an account that they don't realize that they set up 3 accounts, or they meant to fund their IRA for 2018, but it got put in for 2017, and now they can't undo it. Or they tried to do a Roth conversion for their spouse, but they did it wrong. So that's one element that I can speak to firsthand now to them, that of course you have the option, and I'm happy to give you direction and gear my advice that I write down to you towards doing it on your own. But just realize that it's almost too easy sometimes to make decisions and analysis paralysis. There's so many options. I don't really know where to go about starting sometimes when you actually get online. So I think that's always going to be an issue going forward now. And the way to separate, besides what you said there, being personal and having unbiased opinions, is just giving really good ideas, giving examples. When they're spouses, that's like a huge benefit that you can provide, because typically spouses don't want to ask the tough questions of each other that maybe an advisor can. Business owners tend to not have someone that is helping them set up their profit system for their business and pay themselves and keeping them accountable for their profits, instead of just reinvesting everything in their business or buying something else of an investment. So those are again, looking to the niche thing, ways to differentiate, whether it's married couples or business owners. For me, on the faith-based side, how do I make sure that I'm being wise with what I have from an internal perspective, and making sure my investments pertain to my values. I'm not sure if there's a from a values standpoint in terms of like a faith-based component.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement. What do you see when, I mean, from your own perspective, Garrett, working with clients on a monthly basis, how's that make you feel? I mean, what do you get out of having an ongoing relationship with these clients?
Yeah, so I think the ongoing relationship is everything to me. You know, part of the reason that I've been doing what I do for so long is because you have the ability to help people, right? I think that's what life's all about. So when you can run your business in this way and strive to develop that long-term relationship with people where there's this mutual trust, and they know that you've structured things in a way that you can be as transparent as possible and about as unbiased as possible as well, in order to help them with such a big part of their lives, their finances. It's pretty amazing.
Eric, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy working with retirees, as well as people that are a decade or two from that retirement age. However, when you're with the people that are working with that are on their way to retirement, there's just more going on in 30s and 40s and even 20s that you can have those discussions with that you can't really have when someone's already kind of done it. They've already saved, they're retired, and maybe they're looking second half of life. So that in itself is super fulfilling because you're helping young families and people that are making career changes and, for the first time, maybe getting out of debt or investing in substantial ways and reaping the rewards for themselves and their families, getting freedom from maybe, 9-to-5 kind of jobs that aren't really what they want to be doing. And they're trying to transition to more entrepreneurial type things. Those are huge milestones that are really exciting and gratifying for sure. Yeah.
Do you feel like the monthly retainer model lends itself to a specific age group, or does it kind of does age not matter, Eric?
Yes, I think so. Just because I think monthly tends to lend itself to people that aren't in the AUM space yet, just because there's no other way to charge. But there are plenty of people that have the assets, like I alluded to at the beginning, that are much more DIY validator, and maybe they have a hobby or enjoy, reading the Investor Business Daily and doing the Morningstar research and going in and doing it themselves. They just want an advisor to talk to, and they're willing to pay out of pocket in a taxable account, and they don't really mind that there isn't a tax advantage to paying out of a retirement account, which is what AUM is. So you will find some of that, but I would say the majority of the time is going to be a younger crowd because the income to current asset ratio is right.
Yeah. Garrett, have you found the same thing?
Yeah, it's certainly true. I would say another interesting thing that I've seen a couple of XY members doing is utilizing the same exact model for high and ultra high net worth individuals that would otherwise, be paying pretty substantial AUM fees at a big wirehouse. They start running the numbers, and they can engage a true fiduciary comprehensive planner for significantly less, even on the monthly retainer model.
Yeah. Vincent in the chat says that he's noticing a trend towards more project work, that some Gen X retirees or pre-retirees seem to not be interested in a long-term relationship, but would definitely, he would prefer reoccurring revenue. How does that conversation go, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, if you subscribe to the blue ocean strategy, which is swim where the sharks aren't, then that'd be where the project work is. And if you're okay with that for a season of life or until you have enough ongoing revenue, that you can just say no to the project work because you don't want to do it, then that's one strategy. But having the option is definitely a benefit. I think it causes us advisors to have to be a little bit more creative, maybe provide a name or a brand to whatever your project is. But I think that's probably also a function of what kind of a landscape of business we have now. There's all kinds of freelance and entrepreneurial type platforms like Fiverr and Rabbit and TaskRabbit and coding and all kinds of stuff where you pay for the project, and then once it's done, it's done. But people tend to understand that, and I don't see why it's not a option to do as an advisor if you want. I mean, I do it currently, and I enjoy it. It allows me to get better and learn, as well as help people that maybe don't really get the conversations that they should from advisors, because typically advisors want to work with a big asset and charge their quarterly fee.
Garrett, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say another thing to consider in addition to what Eric stated was that frequently somebody will come to you with project-based stuff, maybe because they're hesitant to jump into a more long-term relationship. But I think it's important to, especially when you're getting started, take that project work if you can, because if you honestly do a good job for them and show them all the things that they likely didn't think of, they'll see a lot of value in that, and then they'll jump in from there on out and say, hey, I want to work with you on a regular basis from here on out.
And if you're lucky enough to score them in your niche, or even not, they're great referrals. They're
Yep.
great people that can talk your name. Going back to the conversation about AUM and kind of having two ways of charging, how do you handle the conversation, or what do you do when a client approaches enough to start billing AUM? Do you begin to do that, or what does that look like, Garrett?
Yeah, so that is what I do. Michael Kitces wrote an awesome article on this. I'm drawing a blank on the title of it, but it's when he made the comparison to when airlines divvied up tickets and baggage. Nobody likes being dinged twice for what many people view as the same service. So for that reason, yes, I do shift to AUM. And frankly, the saliency of it is another big thing to consider. Having it deducted from an investment account is frankly a lot less painful than having it debited from your checking account. So that's another thing to consider.
Eric, have you had that conversation yet?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is the onus is on the advisor to help the client understand even what that even means. Because sometimes the conversation doesn't come up if it just isn't appropriate at the time. You're not going to talk to them about all the ways you get paid to manage investments if it's just not there yet. So, if it's a gradual thing where they're funding monthly into their Roth or 401ks or something like that, I'd say it's more likely that conversation comes up organically because you're approaching it. If you have, as an advisor, maybe a minimum number in an AUM where you don't need to charge monthly or shouldn't charge monthly, which would be completely separate than doing a financial plan, just kind of to get an idea of what they're doing. But I think where that really comes a challenge is when there's a windfall, and now all of a sudden, I have this inheritance, and I was going to go talk to the wirehouse down the street because I thought they were the investment guys, and you're more the planner, and then you got to kind of educate and say, well, actually, I do that as well, or that's direct competition, so I can help there. So yeah, I've had those conversations, and yeah, it becomes, you kind of got to lay the groundwork all over again, the difference between fee only and commission based, and how people get paid, and why it's better to have less conflicts, and ultimately helping the client understand why you're a better option as an advisor. and why it makes sense to bill, whether it's for the tax advantage reasons, if it's in a retirement account through an AUM, or just because it's an easier transaction, the way Garrett was mentioning.
Yeah. Speaking kind of just about the monthly retainer model, a caller sent us a question early on. In your experience, how long does it take to build sustainable revenues when you start from scratch on the monthly retainer model? Both of you guys just started in October. So Eric, how did you feel with your income trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I purposefully, our personal family here wanted to have a 3-year runway of just expenses personally and in the business to be able, yeah. But some people believe in eustress, which is positive stress, where you put yourself in a position where your back's up against the wall to make the money, and you do well in that situation. I'd rather put fake stress on myself than real stress, but it's dependent also on how many mouths you have to feed, or if you have clients coming over with you, that kind of stuff, as far as making a transition, or if you're just starting from scratch. I like to provide as much of a runway as possible as far as your own personal expenditures, and 3 years just sounded like a really good number to me.
That's a really good advice. And I think if you were to talk to any of our members, they'd really, really recommend that you give yourself a financial runway. Garrett, how about you?
Yeah, so I would absolutely second the financial runway there. It's pretty much imperative, but absolutely there are an infinite number of variables that go into that. How much is it going to cost you to run your business? But like Eric said, how many mouths do you have to feed? What are your expenses in day-to-day life? A couple of thoughts. One is depending on where you're at, side gigs are huge in XY. XY has an awesome piece out to just let you brainstorm ideas if that could be of assistance to you. And another big thing to think about is how much effort do you want to put in to growing this? It's a grind, and again, I would point you towards a monthly center of influence Excel piece. Maddie perhaps can drop the link to this, but an awesome piece that XY put out that just helps you break down how many contacts you need to make with existing clients, prospects, centers of influence, and set yourself goals and work towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of what we do at XY is support the advisors in terms of helping achieve some of those goals. Coaching, study groups are both really integral in achieving some of those the big markers that you want to meet. I like this question that just came in. Have you ever transitioned any clients from traditional AUM model to the monthly fee model? If so, how'd it go? Garrett?
I have not done that. I've thought about it as my practice has grown, as my clients have grown in net worth. It's something that's on the horizon for me, I think, but I'm yet to actually do it.
Yeah, Eric, have you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I haven't. I think I'm having a current discussion now due more towards the example of being on the higher end of AUM, where you just want to bill a fixed fee now because the percentage is so large that it kind of goes back to the classic fee only model of a couple decades ago, where it was like the family wealth advisor who's handling everything. So they pay a fixed fee, whether it's a quarter or a monthly. But I haven't gone backwards from so to speak, from AUM to monthly on maybe just a normal amount of AUM.
Yeah. Do you guys have thresholds that you have that once a client has a certain amount of money or is making a certain amount that they move up your tiered services or anything like that, Eric?
Yeah. I have breakpoints on the AUM side, but in terms of I like to frame it in terms of revenue to the business. and like a minimum amount to bring on a friend or a family member, and whether that's charged through the monthly or through the AUM, I'm kind of indifferent to. And for me, that's right around $2,400 a year, which would be a $200 monthly retainer, or round numbers, $250,000 of AUM, as far as a minimum. So if you have $250,000 of assets in a trust or an IRA, then I don't really need to have the monthly retainer discussion, because it's getting billed already through AUM, and that is enough on a minimum threshold standpoint to be a profitable relationship for everyone, for my business at least.
Garrett, how about you?
Yeah, so very similar to Eric. Certainly had the breakpoints in the AUM fee schedule, but I haven't set a specific number as far as where that flips. But what I've been kicking around is very similar to what Eric is discussing.
This was a good question that came in prior to this call, and then some of you, and now you'll likely be working. You'll be hitting your 1-year mark with some of your clients soon. How do you keep them engaged, considering that there may be, from the perspective of a client, some diminishing returns on the services? That's, I think, probably what we're fighting against. How do you keep folks engaged kind of past 6 months, Garrett?
Yeah, so I think it's important to not overwhelm the client with everything that they need to work on. Because once you dive in to all of their finances with your expertise, you can probably identify a slew of things that they should be working on. So I think it's vital to prioritize them on the back end, and then present them with a far more manageable, say, top 3, maybe even fewer, to work on by specific points in time. And then as you encroach those and as they're achieving those goals, then present them with the additional ones. Quite simply, and not only is it good for business, but I think if you present them with the slew of recommendations, they're very likely to get overwhelmed and not do anything at all.
Yeah, information paralysis or something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Eric, what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a few ways. One is the deliverable that I mentioned, which is an executive summary, or I try to keep it down to a page or two of what's important to them, what are their current targets, and then what are the action items to get there. There's usually a half a dozen or so. So that check-in at around the 3 month to 6 month point of how are these going, and let's schedule a meeting to see if we need to make course corrections or check those all off the list and put another amount of items on there as things change. Meeting with the tax or the attorney is a way to stay engaged as they're meeting with them. So I offer up and have meetings, whether I initiate it or they initiated a meeting with their tax professional, either at the end of the year or around tax time. And then I make sure that they're aware that I can and want to be in that meeting, whether it's virtual or local. So that's a way to stay engaged as well. And it's a very timely and pertinent subject matter. Everyone has to file taxes. If they're more of a local client, then I have ongoing events, whether it's a morning breakfast or a workshop that is not necessarily a review meeting, but definitely keeps them engaged. And then the newsletter that I send out, I invite comments or replies to the content that I'm putting out, and it's hit or miss, but a lot of times it's a way to generate some contact and keep engaged.
Yep, got it. Garrett, going back to you, we've talked about fees practically this whole hour, but that's the point of this call. How do you determine the fee? Do you use something like the expected number of hours? And if yes, what happens when you get the client that calls every day?
Yeah, so it's not easy. It's not a simple formula that I can just give you, and it works. As Maddie alluded to, every client's different. Some are frankly going to be far more profitable than others, given the amount of work that they are going to want you to do. I think I saw some questions beforehand about starting far more affordably to try to generate some new business. So that might be something you consider, but ultimately you sort of have to consider a multitude of factors on as far as how you're going to price yourself, how much you want to average per year, how many clients are you going to service, how many clients do you therefore need at that hourly rate to hit your revenue goals? Again, what are your expenses, so on and so forth. Not a terribly helpful answer, but there's a lot to it.
Do you have a hourly rate you associate yourself with?
I ashamedly do not, but I should. There's, sort of ways that you can sort of back into that. Start with how much you would like to make your first year, and figure how many clients you might think you want to be able to work with, and go about it that way.
Yeah. Eric, how about you? What factors do you weigh when deciding the price point?
Yeah, the hourly, I try to give a range. I mean, $250 to $350 an hour of work, contact with the client, meetings is what I try to average if I'm pricing it from an annual arrangement, which usually ends up being monthly. And then factors that also determine the range of how much they pay monthly is if they're single versus married and have kids, and there's more goals with education and accounts to set up and things like that. $2,400 to $3,600 is my range there. And then if there's a business in the family, an entity of some sort, then that's included, and that's usually from $4,000 to $6,000 of a range of an annual number that can be billed monthly or quarterly. So those are two frameworks that are pretty specific. And then just from a percentage of net wealth and income, I try to at least have an understanding in my mind of if I were to, because some advisors, there's networks that bill based on, for example, 0.5% of net wealth and 1% of income. And then I compare that to what I would bill just for my monthly. And if it's way different on my number, then I know I'm just not a good fit for the value I provide. So it's having those kind of metrics or understanding. And that's one way to help the client understand as well the value, or to relate it to something. If I say, look, this is basically 2% of your annual revenue, is that worth your future? Is that worth your education from a financial standpoint, to not make mistakes and to reach these priorities that you have? And 2% is not a lot, usually, for most people.
Yeah, and a caller said that they were interested to hear that the monthly fee is oftentimes kind of what's leading into the AUM eventually, because that may seem to compromise the integrity of the relationship being kind of ongoing versus how much money you've got saved. Is there any concern over changing the relationship based on planning over to one monetized by asset management, Garrett?
Not for me. I think. Again, it goes back to that mutual trust that you have with the client, and them understanding exactly where you're coming from and how you've built out your business to be able to serve them in what I believe is a pretty darn good way to go about it. So, I mean, if you have that, more often than not, they are entirely receptive to whatever you recommend.
Yeah. And we've been dropping in really great resources in in the chat area. We've got a great mailbag episode with Michael and Alan on XYPN Radio talking about the intersection of AUM and monthly retainer. Just FYI that those resources are there, and we can certainly send them to you after the call. Eric, what's your take on that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just the idea that folks start with the monthly and then move to AUM. What is, as the caller put it, is there a concern over changing the relationship based on planning over one that's monetized by asset management?
Yeah, I mean, for me, anytime there's a change in how I charge or fees or a conversation, I'm always concerned about fees. And I try to have as few conversations that are specific to fees as possible, because I just feel like once you're in that mode, it becomes less about the value added and the partnership and the trust and that kind of stuff. So there's always, for me, a concern of switching how things are done, because that tends to end up like, why? I mean, anytime your cable bill is changed, your phone bill is changed, or anything like that, it's like, well, why? I don't want to pay that, and I think it should be different. But I mean, hopefully, if I'm hopeful, my hopeful answer is that they like me enough and I've added enough value that it's like, of course, I trust you. Do whatever you think is most effective for our relationship.
Switching gears a little bit, we had a couple questions come in before the call. Folks are always interested in your tech stacks, how you're billing, but also what the tech is that you're using, financial planning software. Garrett, you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So financial planning software, I started out with Money Guide Pro, excellent software. Highly recommended, especially if you're going to be doing collaborative planning. It's very polished. That being said, it's not the cheapest option, especially to XY members who have right capital available to them. I don't do a whole lot of collaborative stuff, not at least not with the portal aspect. So I recently switched to Right Capital. Also highly recommended, love it. Utilize Wealthbox, again, included in your XY membership, hands down the best CRM that I've used. It just makes everything incredible. Utilize TD Ameritrade and Veil One and iReval for everything on the investment management side. As far as billing goes, AdvicePay is awesome. BillFin is excellent for AUM billing. There's also Capitech. A lot of XY members are moving towards that for AUM as well as performance reporting. I think that about sums it up.
Yeah, that's great. Good memory. Yes. Eric, what is your tech stack looking like nowadays?
Yeah, I'll put a plug for this for XYPN for sure, because I try to just use as much of the offerings that is available, because they're good, but also because it just makes sense from a cost standpoint. So Right Capital and Wealthbox and all those that were mentioned by Garrett. AdvicePay, I feel like, is a game changer. Again, I like options, and for people just to go in and choose credit card or checking, I don't really make a distinction. I let them do whatever they like, and there might be a little bit of a difference for me on my bottom line, but in the past, that was never even an option. It had to be mail checks or pay cash. I don't know. No, you can't do cash. I'll put a plug for Zoom. I end up using the Zoom share screen whiteboard, which a lot of people, I don't know if they're familiar with, but it's as simple as using their circle diagrams and the arrows and the text box, and you can build out a pretty helpful diagram as you're having the meeting with the client and give it to them, which I have found way more valuable and useful than a Right Capital printout. I end up using Pages or whatever your Word document is that you want to use for the one-page plan that I give to them. I'm a part of Kingdom Advisors, and there's an app on there that has a diagram of grow, live, give, that you can really easily illustrate where the client's money is going in a pie chart. And I feel like a lot of times it's a light bulb moment for them, and you can track it over time and see how the slices change between paying taxes and debt and saving and giving money away. So those are a couple off the beaten path examples.
Great. And we did just drop a link into Advice Pay. Advice Pay is a member benefit for XYPN members. It was created for advisors who want to bill on a monthly or reoccurring basis. It is the compliant alternative included in membership. And it sounds like both these guys rely on that as well. We've gotten almost to all questions, which I'm pumped about. We're going to wrap up in a couple minutes. I wanted to make sure I got to Kevin's question, and it's back to the discussion between AUM and retainer. But have you ever considered charging an AUM fee and a retainer fee to make it clear that there are two different types of work taking place? Sounds like the retainer is used only until you can switch to AUM. And let me just preface, callers, that Garrett and Eric are great representations of our membership, but each and every firm is a little bit different too. So what they're saying is not, it doesn't have to be one way or the other. But Garrett, go ahead and speak to that.
Yeah, so it sort of coincides with what I mentioned earlier about sort of the airline analogy. You might get a little bit more pushback if you charge for both. That being said, there are plenty of XY members out there that very distinctively separate the two services, which is somewhat fair in my opinion. So, for that reason, clients can sort of pick and choose what they want. Do they want solely investment management, solely financial planning, or both?
Eric, how about you?
Yeah, I do actually. I have clients that I'm doing both at the same time, the planning fee as well as the investment management fee. And usually that's due to the fact that they're kind of a startup scenario where we're setting up retirement accounts and investment accounts. So there just isn't enough assets there to bill strictly AUM. I have to supplement it with planning, which there's real value add and work done on the planning. But I just know internally that I'll stop one of them once they get to a point where it's enough of a fee for me, because I'm not trying to gouge anybody, and I'm trying to work with people long term, and I think that people appreciate that.
Yeah, wonderful. Before we wrap up, do either of you guys have any final words of wisdom to the callers who are either considering or are in the process of servicing clients in this manner? Eric?
Yeah, I feel like it's an open, like I mentioned before, kind of blue ocean of ways to help people. And it's a great way to learn too as an advisor, because there's a lot of different scenarios that people ask questions on that maybe you don't typically hear from a traditional AUM client. And then I would just say there's enough resources available now with the Advice Pay and advisors doing it. The book that Alan and Michael wrote, the monthly retainer book, is kind of an easy one to look at and read. It's not very long, but that would be one for sure resource. But yeah, I feel like it's an option, and it's probably going to be more of the way things are going in the future with all the ways that investing is being commoditized. AUM, I think, still has a long way to go for sure of being relevant, but I just like having different ways to help people.
Yeah, wonderful. Garrett, any last words of advice?
Yeah, so I think for me it would be as you're hashing out, whatever fee schedule that you're going to use, go with your gut and go with what you legitimately believe in and what you can stand behind and present with confidence and by being proud, because that's going to resonate with whoever it is that you're presenting it to. If you might pick everybody's brain and come up with something, but if you don't believe in it, then the prospect probably won't either.
Yeah, great advice, guys. Thank you both so much, both for the hard work that you're putting towards this industry, but also the work that you're putting towards your clients, and for being great examples of XYPN membership. And really, we do have next month, folks, every month on the first Wednesday, but because next month is 4th of July, we're switching to July 11th. Come back. These calls we've been hosting for over 2 years now, if you can believe it. First month of every first Wednesday of every month except next month, July 11th, we're going to be talking about finding your first clients, which is something we didn't really dive into tonight. You know, both these wonderful guys have a great list of clients, and you're probably wondering, well, how the heck did you get them? That is going to be the call for you. We're going to have Scott Snyder and Jane Wu online. She's awesome. So is Scott. They're going to give you some really good advice about their marketing tips, how to build pipelines, how to make sure that you're getting the clients you want, and finding the first ones. Eric and Garrett, thank you so much for your advice tonight and really for your hard work. I hope this call was helpful. Feel free to send Stacy and Lindsay. I'm sure all of the callers on the line have their email addresses, and ask about membership, ask about other questions that you guys have, and feel free, of course, to reach out to Eric and Garrett. But it's getting late for some of you. I'm honored always, every day, to work with wonderful members like Garrett and Eric. And I'm very thankful for this call. And I hope everyone has a good and safe night. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Maddie.
Bye.
Bye.